Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are the Varsity Voices, where we bring you information and insights on high school sports, as well as the Chicago Catholic League. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and like us on wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm Joe Freveletti, one of your hosts, and here with me is your other host, Dan Freveletti. And today on the podcast, I'm excited to welcome a trailblazer in education and athletics, Dr. Karissa Niehoff, CEO for the National Federation of State High School Associations, or NFHS. Dr. Niehoff's career began in Connecticut public education in 1988, where she excelled as a teacher, athletic director, school administrator, among many other roles. In 2010, she took on the role of executive director for the Connecticut Association of Schools, Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference. And then in 2018, she made history by becoming the first woman selected as chief executive officer for the NFHS, where she now oversees 51 member state associations and nearly 20,000 high schools across the country. Dr. Niehoff, with an impressive list of accolades and contributions to education, athletics, and youth leadership, you're truly a remarkable voice in your field. And Dr. Niehoff, we'd like to welcome you to the Varsity Voices podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Joe and Dan. And I've heard such great things about your podcast with so many episodes you've done. And just grateful to be a part of this today with you, and so grateful for your work paying attention to high school interscholastic athletics and how important that experience is for young people.
We really appreciate you coming on. I read your recent article on the NFHS Voice, and it really resonated with me and with Dan. We talked about it after we both read it, because we mention all the time, or a lot in our episodes, about certain things at the higher levels, whether they be the pro level, college level, and how those things are starting to push down to the high school level, and what that means, right? And we're definitely seeing a trend, as I'm sure you are, because you've got a much kind of bigger landscape that you're looking at. But one of the things you mentioned was about high school sports and how historically they focused on the team rather than the individual, which I think is really important. How do you see this philosophy being challenged in today's sports landscape and high school landscape? And what do you think schools and communities can do to kind of preserve that?
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.
Is a really, really super question, and also complicated issues that are all tethered to that question itself. I think at the highest level, we use the word philosophy, whether it's a philosophy or a paradigm shift, something. I think what has happened is that high school interscholastic athletics have gone in the public eye or mindset from something that was originally intended to be formative to now performative. And that paradigm shift drives a lot of what we're feeling when you talk about, we used to use the word trickle down, a little bit of a wash going on, a wash down, when we look at issues like waiver requests around rules, transfer rule in particular, looking at the influence of NIL energy at the collegiate level, and certainly the professional environment, the influence of media capacity. And a lot of that capacity through platforms and coverage and all of this, very well intentioned and adds a ton of excitement to the game. But when not sort of used appropriately, especially in the high school space, it can be really damaging. So a lot of forces are at work that are influencing the experience at the high school level for the kids, but also the expectations of parents, coaches, et cetera, and schools ultimately, and state associations are being challenged. The rules are being challenged. And, rules exist for a reason.
Right.
It's the reason that people really don't want to accept now that has allowed for this disruption.
Yes. So you mentioned a couple of topics here, right? Very trending, NIL transfers, and you mentioned the growing issue of transfers for athletic purposes. We're starting to see that trend as well. With different athletes at different high schools, transferring, maybe outside of the rules or whatever the rules are. I think the rules are in some cases very nebulous, right? But why do you think the trend of transferring in high school sports, why do you think that's detrimental? And what specific steps do you think the state associations can take to address it effectively?
Yeah, appreciate that question, Joe. And 15 seconds of history. High school state associations were started over 100 years ago because they were watching what was happening at the collegiate level with recruitment and transfers. And this is over a century ago. So a group of school administrators, and actually in Illinois, got together and said, we need to do something to protect the integrity of the student athlete experience in high school. So across the century, there have been challenges to these rules. Probably state associations are more fraught with challenges now than ever before. So you're absolutely right. We just less than 2 weeks ago met with every single state executive director in the country. The number one concern and challenge for them, and it's got a legislative focus on it, is the rules and regulations specific to transfers. Why do we think that's become a problem? I think because we've forgotten a little bit that, especially in high school, these are student athletes. And if we just allow kids to move schools for athletic purposes, number one, their academic development is fragmented. It's broken, it's inconsistent. We want these kids to get through high school. Number two, their social development becomes fragmented. And with that sort of disruption for schools themselves, having been a former high school principal, when kids come and go, it leaves an impact on classes, on teachers, on the environment of the school, on the families, and on the teams. Another element to this is the issue of displacement. If students leave and just enter into another school, somebody might get displaced. And now what do we do to address those kids, those student athletes? So it's a very complicated sort of lineup of dominoes that in the high school space is really disruptive. High school is about academics first. And we want to make sure that that experience for kids is as solid as it can be. Every single state association has an opportunity to ask for waivers due to hardship reasons. And if those reasons are legitimate, kids are allowed to transfer. Or if they legitimately change of address, they move for whatever reason. That's a different situation. But when they try to get around a rule and move a school for athletic purposes, that's just not fair. And, we're really trying to make sure that those kinds of processes and waiver requests are legitimate. I'll give you an example. West Virginia, they have less than 200 schools. And in the first 2 weeks of their season, their fall season, had over 400 transfer requests.
Wow.
Not all of those are legitimate change of address.
Right.
So you think about the hours that state associations are taking with their committees to address all of these waiver requests. And then when somebody's not happy about the state trying to uphold their rule, lawyers are expensive, legislators are free. So
That's true.
we're finding people going quickly to a legal pursuit or to a legislator that might want to do right by their constituent, draft something, and then just back away, not really understanding why rules are there. So your very good question. I apologize for the length of the answer, but why has it become a problem? Athletic reasons. They're watching what's going on at the collegiate level. The transfer portal at the NCAA level is a mess. And a lot of people are saying, well, if they can do it, why can't high schools? Why shouldn't high school kids be able to play wherever they want? If that was allowed, you would have sport powerhouses and kids moving all over the place. Liability for these kids, it would be a mess. So complicated answer.
It is. There's a lot to it. And doctor, it's funny. Both you and Joe use the term, trickle down effect, and doctor, you said kind of a wash effect, and I have in my notes here a waterfall effect, or it's like a fire hose effect. But and you touched on the fact that you had a meeting 2 weeks ago to kind of address this, and I thought to myself, it's a huge country, obviously, and so many associations and players within that, and how often do you get to interact with state associations, either as a group or individually, to address issues that advance so quickly?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Dan. Actually, it's quite often. So of our 51 associations, all 50 states and Washington, D.C., those executive directors and commissioners, we text back and forth on a regular basis. We execute surveys if they have an issue come up. The membership is great about staying in touch. We see them all together at our summer meeting, our winter meeting that we just had, and in the fall, every September for about 5 weeks, I, along with our COO and Chief Marketing Officer, travel to all of our sections and meet for 3 to 6 days at a time with these executive directors. We bring them together in April, and we have 65 different committees that they have the opportunity to serve on. So it's pretty much constant communication. One of the trends that we're seeing, and the meeting we just had a couple of weeks ago, we had a panel around transfer issues. Our membership is not trying to stiff arm this stuff. They're trying to respond with reason. Look at their bylaws and regulations and say, is there a place to try something with more flexibility? So some of our states have moved to a one-time transfer policy, where sometime during the 4 years, a young person can say, I don't like it here, I'm going there. Let's allow that to happen, as long as it's not for strictly athletic reasons, however we demonstrate that.
Right.
We'll allow it. And we had that in Connecticut because we had a lot of tech schools and charter and magnet schools. We had it after the freshman year. If student athlete goes to a school and they're like, oh, this is not my jam, don't like the tech environment or what have you, I'll go back to my sending school. No problem, no eligibility issues. You're good to go. So states are doing that with whatever creativity they can apply to best suit their schools.
And how is that working? Like, for example, in Connecticut, has that stemmed the number of transfers, or students requesting the transfer, or are they, now maybe challenging that? I should be able to do it more than once, or after my sophomore year or junior year. How is all that working out as far as you can see so far?
Yeah. So what we've heard, and so Connecticut had that in place for well over a decade. Maybe even 20 years at this point. So it takes care of kids that make a choice as freshmen that really isn't the best choice for them. They're not happy in that academic program. They want to go back. And we had 19, when I was there, 19 different ways to apply for a hardship waiver. A tragedy in your family, some sort of reason that the school setting where they are isn't right. Those were typically granted. What we've heard from states across the country is it's taken care, the one-time transfer has taken care of a good number of initial waiver requests. There are still, however, an increase in requests that really look like athletic purposes. And a lot of this too, a lot of our high school coaches are not teachers, they're lay coaches. And when we were growing up, a lot of our teachers were our coaches. So a lot of our high school coaches actually work in club settings. If they get a job in a high school, we're seeing a draw of kids that might be their club kids that now are looking, and we discover this, they're looking to transfer where the club coach might be. So the states have to dig into those things. Athletic transfer requests are still very much a problem. The one-time transfer has relieved a little bit of that black and white all or nothing position, and there's consideration around the reason for the transfer request. Now, the state of Florida, bless their hearts down there, they actually basically have no transfer rules. Those kids down there can play at School A in the fall, School B in the winter, and School C in the spring.
Interesting.
Well,
Yeah. And that state association is doing their very best to try to keep a handle on where these kids are. And the schools are really trying to keep some sort of cohesion around an academic experience. But we're really watching what Florida's doing, because as you all well know, if one state does something that's pretty loose, other states may be looking over their fence watching, and legislators will say, well, I like what they're doing. How come we can't do that?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. So, we did a broadcast on playoff structures, and it's so interesting to see the differences in all the states. We said we challenged our audience to try and find two that were exactly alike. And it sounds like this is pretty similar. But, as a follow-up to my previous question about how often you're able to meet with the associations, the influence that you talked about, is so strong. And I think college has far surpassed professional sports as the influence, and the uniforms to me are like the strongest indicator. As a former coach, we used to see the kids with the rolling up their pants and being like, what are you doing? And you don't see that in the NFL, but it made me think, do you ever get access to go up and say to the NCAA, for example, you guys are killing us? Is there something you can do to either make a blanket announcement about either how UC players do this, don't do that? We have a transfer portal, high school does not. Is there any sort of dialogue between your two associations that where they can help you out?
Absolutely. That question, Dan, is great, because I also want to work in the industry itself. The SFIA, the Sport and Fitness Industry Association, and the National Sporting Goods Association. Those industries have a tendency to sometimes, without malintent, get out ahead of equipment and things like that. So we're in touch with those two groups on a regular basis, as well as our colleagues at the NCAA and the rules departments. And we actually have very good dialogue with them. Every April, we have a 3-day meeting. And then during the seasons, high school rules editors meet with collegiate rules editors. They're at our rules meetings. We might be in their committees. We do it a little differently, but we are in constant communication. The knee pad issue in football, we actually just talked about this literally like a week ago. And we just had our rules committee here in town in Indy for football. We literally just 3 days ago, we wrapped up that meeting. And there's a real burden of responsibility on coaches or officials, both and the kids. When the official at the start of the game says, are your players properly equipped, coach? And coach says yes. Kid runs in and off the sideline. Knee pads are up. Okay, now who's responsible for this? So there have been cards thrown at coaches. Some states have getting the coach off the field entirely after a couple of cards. The kids have to be responsible for this. The official doesn't want to have to stop the game and do this. So there's got to be raised respect for adherence to the rules. They're there to keep kids safe. When we talk with the NCAA, we literally have said, when the coaches and officials at the collegiate level are not enforcing this rule, for example, our high school kids are doing the same thing. And we've got to be consistent here. We literally, in our football rules committee meeting, asked our rules editors, and all 51 not Texas, 50 of the 51 are there. Half of the room said they interpret it one way, half said they interpret it another way. So we've got to get our arms around rules interpretations at every level. And it's around those. Is it the eye grease? Is it new forms of tinting on the eye protection on the helmet? Does it connect to the helmet? Well, we allow the guardian, all sorts of these things. So Dan, we are in regular communication with the NCAA rules editors and the industry itself. NCAA allows certain things that we don't, and that's okay. That's okay. Our kids are different level of play. And most of our high schools in the country are actually small. We're not all Texas and Georgia or SEC. Mm-hmm. So it's complicated there too. But we'll give them some real clear concern when we feel like what our kids are seeing, they think is okay. Why is it not okay for me to pull my pads up?
Right. Yeah. So you did note in your article, Dr. Niehoff, that there there are some beneficial kind of trickle down effects from the higher levels of sports. You also highlighted the importance of kind of holding the line on certain principles.
Yes.
What lessons do you think high school sports programs should embrace from college or professional sports, and which should they, in your opinion, kind of actively avoid?
I will absolutely tell you where we hold the line. And if there's a hill to die on, from our perspective, it's first around NIL. We all agree that the three of us, our kids, code, anybody, any human being owns their own name, image, and likeness. And we know that our young people, they can be entrepreneurs, they can be influencers, and they're more brilliant than me on how to do that, for sure. And we support that kids have an opportunity to make money on their name, image, and likeness. What we really stand firm on is that they're not entering into professional contracts using their NIL while representing the high school, wearing that high school jersey. They own their NIL. They don't own the high school jersey. If that starts to happen, then essentially they've become professional high school athletes.
Mm-hmm.
We are trying to draw a very firm line in the cement where high school should be amateur while representing your school. Now, we all know that's also super great. We know that the average high school NIL deal is about $65, and it's likely the face on the local pizza place billboard, and they're just wearing a shirt, maybe holding a ball, but they're not wearing the high school jersey. So we're going to see where this evolves as well. I don't think the NCAA wants us to be like them. I don't think professional sports want us to be like them or the NCAA. We're not seeing any state legislature saying we're passing a law where they can be professional athletes at the high school level representing their school, knock on wood. So far, we've avoided that. We've dodged that issue, but who knows? But for the NFHS and our state associations, we all are in strong agreement that student athletes at the high school level should not earn money while representing their school explicitly.
Yeah. So how prevalent is NIL at the high school level at this point? Is it? I'm sure it's really in its infancy, right? But it's almost like a train you're not going to be able to stop.
The waterfall effect. Right?
The waterfall. We've used a lot of different versions of that,
yes.
haven't we? So Dan and I have wondered. We haven't seen much in the state of Illinois. But we're always wondering, is it out there and is it happening? How prevalent is it, or what are you seeing across the national landscape from an NIL perspective for high schools?
I appreciate that question. To your point, we don't have a lot of data on really numbers of high school kids because a lot of that energy happens outside of the high school. We have a fairly good sense that it's not that prevalent. I think what has been part of the waterfall is the adult energy around it, the creation of collectives, the organizations that are professing themselves to be the expert guidance for families, kids and families around pursuing NIL opportunities. Come here to take coursework. Now there's even an NIL certification that kind of takes them through an educational process about what it is, where to go find opportunities, and things like that. High schools aren't doing that with their kids inside the walls of the school. It really is energy on the outside, and it's disruptive. It's very confusing for families to try to decide, is my sophomore student athlete who's pretty good at the high school level able to get a deal? Who do I talk to? Where do I go? But again, the average high school deal from the folks that we work with that kind of scour the nation and dig into this stuff say it's about $60, $65. It's primarily football and basketball, maybe your occasional golfer, occasional baseball player, softball maybe, track, but it's a handful. Unless these kids have already been tapped to attend like IMG or, really a sports-driven, recruitment-driven athletic experience at outside of our membership school opportunity. Those kids are more prone to NIL opportunities that are more significant. But most of the high schools that are in our membership, there's confusion around it. There's curiosity. We're really trying to make sure we provide schools with legitimate educational resources around NIL, and that schools and state associations can use those resources to work with their kids and families to make sure that integrity is there and the kid's future is considered. You don't want a kid to sign for, we see people trying to sign kids for the duration of their athletic career. So how does that impact their academic decision? If they have to sign and go with shoe company X and they want to go for academic experience at a different place, but it's not that shoe company, it's things like that that become really, really concerning.
Yeah, that would be. And Joe and I talk about a lot of this, and our focus is football. And and so that's what we kind of talk about on a week to week basis. But you touched on something that I want to also address, and we've talked about the effect of college and the NFL, and so football as it stands 11-on-11 doesn't have a strong club presence, at least not yet, not in Illinois. 7-on-7 growing every year, however, we talk about it from a perspective of, kids not being able to attend football practice in the summer, the 20 times that they can meet, because they've got commitments with their club. And I wonder how much influence some of these things that we're attributing to college and professional leagues also get maybe reinforced by the club leagues. And is that also, I feel like I'm giving you or suggesting you guys have more time in the day than what's reality to meet with all these different people. But what do you have to do to try and manage the club influence when it comes to some of these issues like transferring NIL and uniform, that sort of thing?
Club influence can be a bear, and it's across sports. Basketball, soccer, now volleyball, they're the big three. To your point earlier, we really don't see a ton beyond 7-on-7 of off-season football for good reason. Football has an unusual inherent risk associated with it. Interesting, we hear more and more college coaches saying they wish their football players were multi-sport athletes.
Yeah.
They want to see them. And it's neat to hear your big D1 coaches saying, and 2 and 3, saying, we want multi-sport athletes coming in. We want not just football players for all sorts of reasons. But the club issue around soccer, volleyball, basketball is massive. It is year-round. It is a for-profit model. And what it starts to accentuate are the haves and the have-nots. When families at a very young age have to write a check, they're traveling all over the place, the kid's 10 years old or younger, and there's encouragement to specialize in a sport, the family pressure is, if I don't sign up again, I'm going to fall behind. And there's reality to that. At many of our high schools, unless the kid has played club, they're not going to make the team. Unless they're running cross country, track. Football actually is one of those sports where a kid might have a chance coming in as a freshman. It's a great sport. There's a role for a lot of people and a lot of body types. So the club is more of a challenge for us outside of football, but we'll see where 7-on-7 goes. State associations have relaxed some of their off-season coaching regulations over the years because they want their high school coaches working with their kids. And there's some dead periods here or there, or a set number of practices, because you don't want overlap there. We have to be very careful as high schools about overlap with, here's a fall season window, here's a winter season window, here's a spring season window, to encourage multi-sport participation and give families a break, honestly. But the other club models, they overlap with the high school season. In the sport of soccer, we have some clubs that will not allow their kids to play in the high school team. They have to play club or nothing.
I've heard that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it's not all. We have actually a very good relationship with our national governing bodies, your USA, fill in the blank, baseball, softball.
Yeah.
We actually have a very good level of respect for the high school experience, because they also know that elite kids are tapped early on, and they appreciate at least that there's opportunity to engage in the sport at the high school level and grow the fan base, grow the membership base. So our relationship with the USOPC is great. It's some of your true for-profit clubs that we struggle with. So it's tough.
Well, looking ahead, if as an organization and yourself, actually, Dr. Niehoff, I think you've touched on, or we've touched on a couple of these, over the last 30 minutes or so. But what do you see as kind of the biggest challenges and opportunities for education-based athletics? And how can organizations like NFHS adapt, or how do you adapt to ensure that those programs, they kind of remain relevant and impactful?
I think the most important thing about what we do is that I look at what we do like the second half of the school day. So you've got your first half, and then the bell rings at 2:30 and somebody puts the proverbial rock in the back of the gym door, and, and it's a different environment. But interscholastic athletics, the arts, all of the things that we oversee at the NFHS, they provide an opportunity for kids at a very sensitive time in their lives to belong. And athletics in particular are a platform for so many life lessons that they're not going to get in a classroom. Certainly not to the degree that they'll get on an athletic field with a team, high level of emotion, physical exertion, a lot of personal challenge met with personal joy. And you know what? And there's failure in there, and there's frustration in there. The education-based high school experience is a place for kids to have a chance to be a part of a team. And not all of them can make a team. And that breaks our hearts. But we've got to find a place in high schools for kids to belong. Maybe it's a club. Maybe it's intramurals. Maybe it's interscholastic athletics. But if our coaches are supervised by education-based trained administrators, if they have to be certified in mental wellness and health and safety and risk minimization, emergency action plans, and the X's and O's, by the way, it's a more comprehensive, prepared program for kids, most of whom are under 18 and have a lot of other mental wellness struggles. This is the most sensitive time in their lives. They've got to have a community around them with caring adults, opportunities to grow and challenge and change, and hopefully come through able to be better citizens, more prepared for the job world, with great memories, as we were talking about earlier, of their high school experience. We're the only country in the world that does this. Canada is a great sibling, but we are the only country of this capacity that does what we do. All the other countries in the world grow their sports on club model. We grow ours on school model. So our biggest challenge is going to be able to protect that model from, I think, sort of disruption from people that really don't understand what we do and why we do it.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, yes, that is that. I think that should be cut and paste and broadcast in a lot of every high school, because that is very well said.
Yeah, and we know. When I think about what you do as an organization and what you do as an individual, I know you've got to be challenged each and every day with the different things that come up from a high school perspective, whether it's education based, athletic based. But what you do is very difficult, I think. But I can tell you have a passion for it, and you're the right person to be there for it. So, we really appreciate you coming on with us today, Dr. Niehoff, and addressing, just kind of some of the topics that we've been talking about. I'd love to have you come on again in the future with us and talk about some additional topics. But really want to thank you for participating today and sharing some of your knowledge and information. I think it was very valuable and will be helpful for our listeners. So thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Well, Dan, thank you so much. It's been my honor, and I'd be happy to visit with you around anything, anytime.
Great, thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. As always, we appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe, follow, and like us wherever you're listening from. And we will talk with you soon.